Welcome back to 8 Cubes, the show where we discuss the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap. I'm KMBest. He's Lambie Series. We're going to start with Weapon X, the Season Pass card in the upcoming season. Weapon X is a card that starts at 2/2, and every time a card is destroyed, gains +1 power, but after the third destroy, that number changes to +2. After the 6th destroy, that number changes to +3. After the 9th destroy, that number changes to +4. So this is a card that in theory scales infinitely, but I think the benchmark that I want to point to for it is in a world where you would get a death at 8 cost 2/0, and you played this guy on 2 and started blowing things up on 3, this would be a card that had 17 power. That's the baseline of where I think this card starts to compare, because it is obviously more requirement than death. It's got to be on the board. You got to spend 2 energy on it. It's got to happen early. But the payoff for the same amount of destroys is a little bit higher. So it's somewhere between reverse death and mini null is sort of how I look at this guy.
Yeah, okay. I think mini null is funny for me because null and death to me is like very similar, whereby you don't actually need them to exist on the board, right? On the final turn, one costs 0 and one is like a bajillion power.
Yeah.
Right. This one needs to exist on the board first, and you need to perfectly blow stuff up for it to be. I guess in the current state of the meta, if it's not anywhere close to 210, it's not enough, So like maybe even like a 2/6, 2/7 is probably too small for like the investment that you might need to play this card. But that being said, if you are like playing a deck that is meant to achieve like 0 cost death anyway, I would think that this kind of does fit for sure. It's just that like I'm comparing this to like current Wolverine, like just the OG Wolverine, right? Like that card's not even like good, So this one is like a little bit more steps, but after you reach a certain point, the payoff is like bigger. So I wonder if this actually gets to fit in like destroy decks, because destroy decks now they don't do this Wolverine thing. They've pretty much been using every other new card. But this might be the first one that I feel like I don't know if it can actually just fit.
I think that maybe this card needs to be a little bit stronger on the base power in order to be a guaranteed inclusion in destroyed decks. Like, if this is a 2/3, if this is a 2/4, I wouldn't be asking the questions that I'm asking about this card. But what I am wondering about this card is like, all right, well, if we're going to put this, we got to maximize it in certain ways.
Mhm.
So the best friend this card has is Killmonger. This is your favorite Killmonger card of all time, because that is a card that is going to allow you to get more than 3 destroys per turn. And that's really important because you really want to get more than 3 destroys per turn when you're doing this. If you're just doing like fill up a lane, blow it up, probably not scaling this guy fast enough that he feels good. I think that means that he makes sense in destroy decks that play like 6 1-drops. That's the kind of thing I can see. And I think he also maybe makes sense in the V-Hand Moon Girl head pool deck, which is just a very, like, I have a million 1-drops all the time. I blow stuff up. I try to get a death cheap. If I'm playing this on turn 2, I'm very happy with it. It doesn't replace Deadpool, but I think the maximalist case for its usage in Destroy is that when you don't have Deadpool, this guy is rewarding you for doing what you want to do when you don't have Deadpool, which is loop Headpool and X-23 and all of that stuff. So I think there is probably a case for him there. I would not be surprised if he ends up making the cut over old Wolverine in those decks. That seems very plausible to me. What I do wonder about is, what will he end up costing you? Because like a lot of the time you're playing 6 1-drops, you've already cut old Wolverine. So are you cutting Deathlock for this guy? That makes him less useful as a guy because you have less destroys. I don't know. It's an interesting card and an interesting spot that I think might have a little bit too low of a floor to be the metagame kind of changing card that you would want from a card like this.
Yeah, this card is interesting because when I say interesting, usually I mean like it's a bit sus as well. Because firstly, like your prime destroy cards, other than Killmonger, which is the obvious one, like let's say Carnage and Venom, right? This card cannot be blown up. Like you need to read the text and realize that this card actually himself cannot be blown up. So like sometimes you want to like pop multiples in one location, but your X-23 happens to jump into the one with the weapon X, and then you're just like, oh, I can't do that. If not, I lose my weapon X. So this card's actually a bit more restrictive the more I think about it. But Yeah, definitely something along the lines of like you want to play like many one drops and then just try to get the Killmonger like by turn 4 or 5 and just blow everything up. And but then again, you're blowing everything up, so everything you blow up kind of has to be like self-replacing as well. And like so I mean, at the end of the day, if you just randomly spawn squirrels on your side of the board, then you'll be really happy. But if not, I think this card might be a bit restrictive.
Next up is Adamantium Infusion. 4-cost skill revives the highest power destroyed card and doubles its power. That is a really interesting card. So, full disclosure, later today, on the day you're watching this, I will be doing a co-stream with Jet where he's going to teach me the Phoenix Force deck. And I almost wonder if I'm learning this deck on the absolute last day it's going to be playing Phoenix Force, because I kind of wonder if this is just going to be like next time we play this deck, it's just going to be replacing Phoenix Force with this, because the targeting on it is what does the cool stuff here, where it's like this targets your highest power destroyed card. That means a lot. That specific guarantee is really important in terms of reviving things. And I think that is actually the best part of this card. You might look at it and say the best part of this card is the doubling. I think the doubling is kind of what you have to do to play a card that costs 4, right? Like, you got to have that. What you don't got to have, what other revives don't have, is that targeting. And I think that targeting is the part that, if anything sets this card apart, is going to be the main thing.
This card is good. And then I don't even know the exact deck yet, but I can almost certainly I'm just very sure this card is gonna be good, simply because of what you just said, which is the whole targeting thing. It's very rare, or is this the only card
I believe it is
ever
yes.
for it is, right? Yeah, it's the only destroy card that actually lets you choose the respawn.
Unless you count
in a sense, when I
Fenris
say
Wolf.
yeah, I mean, okay, actually that was actually pretty insane. That's why that card was like insane with the whole like Shang-Chi thing. But anyway. So so this card's probably just gonna be really good because you can choose the respawn. Like a lot of these like revive stuff, or like cards that are like randomly put cards on the board on like the final turn, or like on certain turns, like we always like reduce the power level or like rate them a bit lower because it's completely random, right? Like you don't get to choose, so you don't actually know the outcome. If you low roll, you lose the game and lose 8 cubes. If you high roll, yeah, you get the 8 cubes. But this one is for sure, right? So I think just knowing for sure what you're gonna respawn allows you to, even if it's not the best case outcome, you can leave the game. And if it's the best case outcome, you for sure get that one, and then you can count the points exactly like how they should be, and then if it's enough, you win the game. So I really think this guy's actually gonna be really good.
I think it was 6 months ago, I was bashing them for how weak Elixir was and how many conditions they put on it that got in the way of it being a good card, right? And now I'm like, okay, maybe they've gone a little bit far the other direction. Elixir has a lot of conditions that are like, all right, this card costs 2, so obviously if it has like good text on it, it's probably really a problem, right?
Yes.
This is a card that costs 4, so they're allowed to put good text on it. And I get that. But like, you look at this and you look at Elixir, and Elixir is like, not only do you not have a choice of what the card is, also it had to die last turn. This is like no requirements on when it had to happen.
Just
get
whenever,
the strongest guy
yeah.
back, double it. You're chilling, right? Like that is the difference between a 2 and a 4 and what you're allowed to do in those situations as far as they put things together. Like it definitely does make me feel like maybe they were right to put the restrictions on Elixir that they did. I also think that there's one other dynamic here, though, and that is, are we sure? Like, just take out the targeting, right?
Okay.
Is the double better than +5 and the ability to move that it gets from Phoenix Force? Just take out the targeting, pretend that's not part of the card.
That's a difficult one, honestly.
Yeah.
Because like I really think that targeting is what allows me to confidently play this card in my deck. You get what I'm trying to say? Like I can confidently know I'm gonna get what I want back for sure, and I know the amount of points that's gonna be on the board after I bring the guy back and double it. So like I think the targeting is actually what really sells it for me. Like above everything.
I agree.
Else.
I'm just trying to ask, like, which one do you think is a bigger bonus? Like, let's say you put the targeting on Phoenix Force. Is it a better card than this?
Yeah.
Okay, so you think that +5 and a move is better than double?
Yes. I think so, because at the end of the day, if it's just doubling and it can't move, it stays in one spot. It's still vulnerable to some stuff sometimes. But the thing is, if the selection is on the Phoenix Force body, you have more player agency. As when I feel like being able to move is like winning a 50-50 sometimes, and Marvel Snap's all about winning 50-50. So yeah, I think it's better if Yeah, I think it's just better.
Next up is the Series 5 card Chamber 2/3 activate, gains +2 power for each 5 cost card here, as in at its location, and in your hand. Sorry, did I say 5 cost card? I meant 5 or more cost card. That's a big deal because it means this card is effectively just like too big. Costs 2 is big in whatever ramp deck. And I think this is notable, especially when like the modern version of the ramp deck, the Isan ramp deck that people play right now, is a deck that plays Iron Patriot and Valentina. It says like 5 cost or more, not costs 5 cost. So it should work with Valentina and Iron Patriot in terms of 5 cost cards, as long as the card Iron Patriot gives you costs 5 or more at base. That means that this card could be quite large in that deck. There are some real opportunities for a big guy. And I think that's a really interesting spot because this is a card that I think is just like a slam dunk solid card in exactly one deck. That one deck isn't all that good, but it's going to be like a Dazzler type of card where you just look at it and you're like, all right, if I ever want to play this kind of deck, I do need to get this card. But it's also not the kind of card you're going to need to pick up if you're like, I only want to play the best decks in the game. If you're like optimizing for the best decks in the game, this card probably isn't going to be in them, but it is going to be in the best version of one specific deck.
Yeah, I actually just want to. I mean, I can feel like this card's gonna be good, like you said, in that deck, right? But I just want to talk about the fact that like the activate is actually very important. The fact that it's activate, because if it's like ongoing and it sits there and just slowly gets bigger, it's actually way riskier to play a card like this, right? So,
Yeah.
so the fact that it's like on the final turn, you just click the button and it just like all the stats comes at once, and obviously your opponent wouldn't know how many 5 cost or higher is in your hand, So there's quite a bit of a surprise factor in there for your opponent, but for you, you know exactly how big it's gonna get. So I think that's very important with this card.
It's almost a card that I look at and I'm like, I wish they could make cards like Devil Dinosaur activate, where you're
That's
like,
too strong, man.
I don't think it is. Like, I look at this and I'm just like, I wish that, like, Devil Dinosaur's gimmick basically punishes you for playing cards. And it's like, that's bad. Why would we want a card that does that, right? Like, if Devil Dinosaur were a Series 5, it probably would have the activate text, right? Like, it's like if they made that in 2025, I feel like it probably would have activate text. I don't know. Like, it's a really interesting spot for, like, where this kind of card can be, because it puts the card fully in your control, but there's also a downside because it's an activate. Oh God, someone has priority and deafening chords it, and my 11 power dude suddenly becomes a 3 power dude. Oh, did I say 3 power? I meant 2 power dude. Like, it's just a really, really interesting card that I think will ultimately end up sort of falling through the cracks, but it is sort of an archetype all-star. Just the archetype it goes in is not very good, which caps how good it can be. Wild Child, a 2/1 with an ongoing ability that gives it +4 power if one of your cards has been destroyed, and +4 power if one of your cards has been discarded. This is one of the sort of themes of the season. This is a destroy/discard themed season, which makes sense given what actual Wolverine is doing. It's a nice little top down if you're going to do a Wolverine themed season to have it be about discard and destroy. I think that this card is actually a really interesting card because there's a number at which it's egregious to be able to play it for 2 power. Like, there is a number, and I think 9 gets pretty close to that number, where you're just like, wow, that is a ton of body for a very small investment. I'm playing this in a Juggernaut. I'm doing that kind of thing, right? Like, I'm doing some really large things. So the question then becomes, how do we get its requirements hit while not actually meaningfully doing any of its requirements, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, there's a pretty easy answer to. Hood Misery and Final Turn Gambit. Those are my answers for like how I'm gonna do this card. Like, I am gonna do exactly 0 other things that do these things, and then I am going to play those cards. And it's like, look, this will be a 2/5, and then sometimes it'll be a 2/9, and I am not putting any other deck building effort into it. I am playing this with Hood Misery and Gambit, and that is it.
I feel like I feel like your deck has to like make this a 2/9 every single time for this to be worth it though. Like your entire
Maybe.
purpose, as in like the thing is, okay, when I say your entire purpose, as in like your deck has to function and do its normal thing. When its normal thing has to make this a 2/9. So you gotta do the pop and you gotta do the discard. If not, like I wouldn't want to put this in my deck, like in the current state of like the meta right now. Because if it's on average more often gonna be a 2/5 than a 2/9, then there's no way I'm gonna play this card, right?
I don't know. I mean, like, consider the following. I play this card and Gambit in Victoria hand. Now, how does it sound?
It sounds good actually.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that actually sounds good.
now I bet it sounds
You
great.
should have just started with the V hand, yeah. Okay, then it sounds insane, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I feel like there's something I can do that's just like, this is gonna be fine enough, because it's just so cheap, and I get to try to free roll it as much as I can reasonably do.
Mhm.
This card also ties into another card coming out much later in the season, same requirements, but it's a 4-cost activate, so it's probably worse. Phantom X. I would imagine that this card is like a pretty appealing card. Like, of all the cards that we're looking at here, this is the one where it's just like, I can very easily see myself playing a decent amount of this, at least this month, as we try to figure out what the archetype looks like. I do worry that it sort of eventually cruises itself towards like one of those 48% win rate, very middling mid-range decks, if you're really investing in this kind of thing. But I do think that, like, I think ultimately my fear for this season is a big uptick in gambits. That's something that occurs to me.
I mean, upticks in gambits is just really just gonna be more rage on the
Yep.
internet for sure. But yeah, I
Content
honestly,
farming.
the thing is like this does make kind of a bit of a sense in VHand for sure. But the problem is like when we talk about VHand in the context of now,
Yeah, like,
you just
why
think
would
of
we
those
ever
12
change anything about the
yeah,
deck?
you think
Yeah.
of those 12 cards, right? And then you just think of this one, you're like, But yeah, we'll see.
Last of the new cards is Wade Wilson. Wade Wilson is a 2. Is he a 2/1 or 2/2? I believe he's a
That's a
2
2/2.
2/2. When he dies, pulls from hand or deck a 1-cost card and gives it +1 power. So pretty clearly supposed to be a Deadpool card, but also pretty clearly a little bit underpowered for what you'd expect for a Deadpool card, because
Yeah.
this card is pulling a Deadpool if that's your only one drop from either hand or deck. That's awesome. I love the idea of being able to tutor a Deadpool, but
Yeah.
it's giving it +1 power, and you have to destroy this card for that to happen. So when are you destroying this card? Turn 3, which means when are you going to be able to start blowing up that 2-power Deadpool? Turn 4.
Turn 4.
I don't think that's fast enough.
That's
That's
way too
just
slow,
I don't
man.
think it's fast enough. It's good flavor. I like it, but I think that we're gonna have to look beyond the obvious interaction here to find something that we actually want to do with this guy. Like, I enjoy the idea of blow a guy up, get another guy. I think that's solid. But if I wanted that, wouldn't I just play Bucky? I don't know that I want to be playing this card.
Yeah. So this card, to me, this card just needs one extremely potent use case, which is not Deadpool. What I'm trying to say is like you can literally build a deck around this card and a future 1-drop that probably is like the entire purpose of your deck, because it tutors that said 1-drop, right? And this kind of cards you kind of just want to play only one cost card, right? And that 1-cost card has to be so impactful that it's literally the purpose of your entire deck. Deadpool. The problem with Deadpool is like we say, it starts getting popped on turn 4. So that's a bit too impossible to do with this card and make it like worth playing. But yeah, we don't have that 1-drop in the game yet that lets you all in and play a Wade Wilson / that 1-drop deck. But maybe in the future we'll have that. And then this card will be a tutor for that win condition. But no, not Deadpool. Too slow.
Prowler was last week's card. He has become the king of tier 2 decks, which is to say,
Yeah.
approximately 100% of Prowler decks. And there are honestly like 5 to 10 different Prowler decks. He goes in the zombies deck, any deck playing Werewolf by Night.
Just a flexible card.
He goes in like all these like Craven move decks. All that, yeah. He goes in like a bunch of them. There's a bunch of different builds, all that. Every single one of them loses the heads up to V-Hand. And that's just sort of fundamentally what makes them all tier 2. Like, if that deck wasn't farming you and doing the exact same thing you're doing, except all of your power dies to their Shadow King, except your Hydra Stomper, but like, oh, I'm doing all this Sam Wilson Craven stuff with a Batroc. Oh, I really hope they don't interact with it. Like, that's sort of the ultimate failing of this card, is that the stuff it goes in just gets a little bit outclassed right now in both the heads up matchup and generally. And so he just ends up being like the world's greatest tier 2 card, with a ceiling that is probably a little bit higher, honestly, because like the reason it's tier 2 is very contextual, but I do think this is a card that like I expected to be maybe a little better than it actually is. And
Agree.
it really came out and it's like, oh no, that actually is just Kate Bishop. Like that actually is just Kate Bishop that hooks into a specific archetype. And if you're not hooking into either the inputs of Prowler by moving cards or the outputs of Prowler by caring a lot about cheap skills, that's not a card you're going to play. And so, yeah, it's Kate Bishop, but we don't even play normal Kate Bishop in like random ass decks anymore. She only goes in decks where there's synergy, and that is true of Prowler as well.
Yeah, I mean the problem with Prowler right now is actually not Prowler's problem. It's just that there's just one prominent force that's just like the better thing to do, right? Which is Victoria Hand, which we'll talk a bit about later. That it's very sad though, because I also did expect this card to land a bit higher, on the like playability spectrum. But like you said, it is definitely playable. It's something you definitely would want to pick up because you can play like 10 different versions of a deck with Prowler, and then like just lose to V hand after that. But like it's still like, I mean, freedom
It's
for you to
really
just, like,
frustrating because no matter what
Yeah,
you do, you end up with
it's
something that gets
frustrating,
Shadow
but at the
Kinged.
same time, you can play a lot of decks with Prowler in them. Like you can fit Prowler in like everything, right? It's so splashable. I really think it's actually so splashable in every tier 2 deck. But
Yes. Like it's like no
just
matter what you
so
do,
splashable,
you
though.
have 15 points of Shadow Kingable power. Whether that be like
Yeah.
Craven Batroc or Zombie Giant Man
So it's
or Werewolf
Shadow
by
King's
Night,
fault.
whatever happens, you are playing a deck that is not as good at playing Shadow King as V-Hand is and is more vulnerable to playing Shadow King than V-Hand is. And so you just sit there and look at them and you do the same amount of points as them and they have a Shadow King that takes, 10 to 15 points off the board every game. And you're just like, why am I doing this? Like that is the problem.
I mean, this topic could arguably, or the next one could arguably also be like a nuke Shadow King question mark topic, but like we'll see.
So Victoria Hand, I think, is pretty clearly the best deck in the game. How do you beat it? Because I think while it is pretty clearly the best deck in the game, it's also not the best deck in the game in a way that is a permanent state of affairs. I think if you're looking for like how you beat Victoria Hand, what you need to look is the meta context in which Victoria Hand wasn't good previously. Like, you want to beat Victoria Hand? Hell beat Victoria Hand any day of the week. Like, that is a really easy option because Vic Hand simply cannot afford to play the expensive tech Stardust, right? That'll do it. Anything that stresses them in terms of tech output. A deck that I think would probably be pretty good into Victoria Hand, honestly, is Surtur Scar. Like, just anything of that nature where you're just like, here's a bunch of guys. Good luck. You don't have interaction for me in this context. Like, anything that is saying your interaction is not meaningful here. And their interaction is very limited. Like, the reason Victoria Hand has stayed at the top of the meta for a couple weeks is because people haven't really focused on beating it because the metagame's been pretty wide. People still have to worry about move. People still have to worry about a bunch of stuff, right? But once you get down to it, I think it's very reasonable to just like be a deck that puts more power on the board than them and dodges their interaction. I actually don't think it's that hard. It's just that like cards keep coming out that push people towards playing more decks that get Shadow Kinged. And so like that has prevented people from doing like the hard targeting of the deck that would otherwise need to happen.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure we talked about it in like the previous episode or like even before that. But like when new cards come out, the way to make them playable or like powerful is like really just to add green power. Like adding green power, it's like you print a special tech card or you add green power. That's how you make a card look like powerful, right? Like more stats or stuff that invalidates stuff. So Shadow King is just in that. Shadow King to me is just like, I feel like it does a bit too much in general right now. Like it's just like too good for what it does, Like green power is just the way your cards get bigger most of the time, and Shadow King just like neuters that so hard. So, and then V-Hand is just like the best Shadow King deck right now. With that being said though, like I think that the point that you made was very true, which is V-Hand is like contextually the best deck. It's not like gonna be the best deck forever, once the meta shifts and then you can't play like Shadow King so easily in like you V-Hand is just the best deck because it's the best Shadow King deck right now.
Yes, it's benefiting from a very constricted meta, right? We had this wide combo meta, and V-Hand was terrible in a wide combo meta because it didn't have coverage versus all that stuff. But as the wide combo meta shrunk down to 1 point, that 1 point being moved because it was the biggest combo deck, it forced all the other competition out. Then you end up with a metagame that is extremely beatable for V-Hand. And that is sort of how we got to where we are. A datamined game mode seems to be coming this month, and I'll just give you the preliminary information that I found on various datamined sites. It's called Team Clash, and this game mode seems to sort of reimagine Marvel's Snap as a faction-based game where there are 5 different factions. Each of those factions has a 6-card deck that you have to play if you choose that faction, and then you choose the remaining 6 cards. These 6 cards are like reimagined versions of cards like Captain America, for example, so it'll have new abilities and weird things going on. And each of the teams also gets a built-in bonus, similar to the Avengers versus X-Men event, where each of the, when you play an Avengers deck, all your Avengers have like an additional line of text that does a cool thing for you. Same with your X-Men, same with your Thunderbolts, etc. Now, the way it works, as I understand it, is there are people who are on the teams that are not also necessarily part of the team, or the core 6, right? The core 6 of the team is in every deck, right? But there are also like more Avengers that you can put in your deck, and they will also get that bonus, that additional line of text, which makes deck building in this very interesting, because I wonder if that kind of means there's no tech in a mode like this. Is this more like a grand arena, or is this more like a very normal like game of Marvel Snap? What I'm really interested in, though, is the factionalization of Marvel Snap, because when you look at other card games, like specifically Magic and Hearthstone, there are rules about what cards you can play in what deck. You don't get to just play every single card. And I think Marvel Snap not necessarily could benefit from restrictions in that way, but in much the same ways like Hearthstone has classes, you could see more restrictions on what you're allowed to do, and that being a fairly interesting dynamic. My guess is that this comes in below Grand Arena for me, but I am interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, so okay, one thing I really like about this mode is like it makes deck building and the whole thing where people like this whole like have an identity thing, right? It's a very strong like theme like for this mode, right? It's like you have 6 Avengers, you can play more Avengers, you can fill your entire deck with 12 Avengers, or maybe just 11 and a tech card. That's what's very interesting to me, because is your deck strictly having 12 Avengers better than playing 11 plus a tech card? You know, like if that tech card is like Shadow King level in this mode, then you probably want to play the tech card. So that's for people to figure out. But yeah, I actually really like the fact that they're pushing this this kind of thing, and like I'm very curious to see like how this one pans out, honestly.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I'm KMBest. He's Lambie Series, and this is the glare in my glasses. Lambie's about to take us out. Have a wonderful evening.
There is also a glare in my glasses, but if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.